Hello, friends. Welcome to another brand new episode of the Third Man in Cricket podcast with Pavandeep and Ravi. It's nice to be back after a bit of a breather following that second test match between India and England in Chennai. And sandwiched between those two test matches in India was the uh, mini IPL auction as a prelude to the 2021 season. I say a mini auction because the mega auction is to be scheduled for next year prior to IPL 2022, when we might have an increase in the number of teams as well. We had a lot of players go under the hammer, but because the franchises had to fill in only certain slots, so there were some hot picks, some millionaires before the end of the day. So with this thought, we'll give you a quick snapshot of who all were lucky to get picked by the franchisees and some of the names, pertinent names, also missed out on getting picked. With that, I would like to welcome my friend Ravi. How are you doing, Ravi?
All well, Pavan Bhaiya. Good to be back. Good to be talking cricket again. Yeah, looking forward for the test match. But again, in between, as you rightly said, uh, a mini auction, yes, maybe with respect to the number of count, probably with the number of players that went under that. But largely with respect to the money spent, never was mini, wasn't it? Hell, loads of money actually spent on Firangi Mal, like how they call it in India.
Yeah, I think
So
we can.
we can probably
Yeah, go ahead.
go ahead.
Yeah, what I was trying to say was, we can talk about that in detail as to what forces these franchises to spend that amounts of money for certain players, which they would not, command if it was a bigger auction. Maybe that is something we can discuss further in detail as well. But I would just like to start off by asking your views on the team-wise summary, if you can present so, or what do you think how the teams are stacked up now post this mini auction?
Indeed, sure. So, what we can do is, I thought of a very, I'll say, a cliched in a traditional format of going team wise, and then discussing what has been there. Probably the number of slots available. Have they actually bought players sensibly? What is the captain's factor in that, and of course the conditions as well. We are back to Indian conditions. It's still not very clear yet if we are going to actually be playing at respective home grounds, because that's not ruled out yet. That's what has been at least being currently commented, or at least there's no clear direction with respect to if it will be actually played at the four Mumbai grounds of Brabon, Wankhede, DY Patil, and the Geo Cricket Stadium, with uh, knockouts and of course the qualifiers or playoffs being moved to Ahmedabad. I wonder why is there some amount of lag in terms of not confirming yet, but it's best to assume that it will be played at Bombay and then again will be moved to playoffs. So accordingly, players, I mean, teams have also gone pretty much keeping in that mind as well. Mainly because next year there's a very mega auction, and then of course there's no long term tag to any of these players that are probably bought this year, other than a couple of amazing buys which may be retained next year. So first of all, I'd really like to start off with RCB, because again, massive criticism that they've gone through in the last a week. But I personally think the Maxwell purchase has been pretty good. I mean, no complaints with respect to that. Uh, I think he still has it in him. Of course, didn't necessarily perform really well today, even against New Zealand, but is still kind of good in those very small boundaries. And then, of course, we didn't necessarily see him do really well on those huge boundaries in Abu Dhabi and Dubai as well. But in India, he's expected to fire, and all the grounds, especially in Bombay, are not very huge. So I expect him to be a very good buy, despite the price tag. Can ball well, can actually give those 4 overs to them. Can definitely score pretty good quick runs, and of course, and is an amazing fielder as well. What necessarily I didn't understand with RCB was why the Jameson buy. They did spend a lot. Okay, because mainly how I see it is, especially all the foreign purchases, right? We have to, kind of segregate it, with respect to their skill set, mainly in terms of keeping, if they can. And that's where Josh Phillippe actually comes into the picture. Would ABD would he be keeping is one question. If not, Josh will be played, and Josh has had an amazing ABBL. In that scenario, we're talking about a lot of players that RCB actually has in their artillery. Uh, Josh can play. ABD is there. Maxwell, Daniel Sams. They bought Dan Christian. I don't know why. Of course, Kyle Jameson, Adam Zampa, Kane Richardson. Okay, I don't know. I personally think it was a messed up foreign artillery for nothing. Or if I don't know if Kohli necessarily wants to, swing around with multiple or probably changing foreign slots. Uh, RCB, I think overall panic buys did necessarily see quality there, but yet don't want to rule out because I'm expecting their Indian strength to do well, especially with in the spin department with Sundar and Chehal. But of course, they're not necessarily bought this year. But overall, I think it's still a balanced side. Would it be Isala Cup Nam Day? Definitely not, in my opinion. And again, this year's purchase, Azharuddin, I was quite excited for him after that one knock in Syed Mushtaq Ali tournament. It was televised, hence got all the eyeballs, but has a pretty okay, uh, you know, career in terms of numbers. But good to see that he was bought this time. And yes, excited to see. What's your view on the RCB purchases, Pawan Bhaiya? What do you say?
Yes, their bowling stocks have always been found wanting in the last 3 or 4 seasons. And as you know, they have been heavily dependent on Virat and AB as far as their batting is concerned. It was nice to see somebody like a Devdutt Padikkal step up to the plate for them last year, and they will be hoping more of the same. And totally agreed on the buys that they went as far as overseas players are concerned. It will be interesting to see whom they play as their four overseas player. One of them is obviously going to be AB de Villiers, and having him keep opens up that slot as well in the team. But then, are they willing to play Joshua Philip as well at the top of the order and give him more chances and time with the gloves? Also remains to be seen. I was okay with the pick of Kyle Jameson. He's been a hot property in international cricket. Of course, he has played only in New Zealand until now and
Mm-hmm.
has
Mm-hmm.
performed well with both bat and the ball. I think it'll be a real test for him once he plays overseas cricket, whether it's the IPL or whether for New Zealand as well. But he's got a good potential, I see, with both bat and ball, and they might want to just add him in their overseas bowling arsenal, is what I believe. As you mentioned, there's spin duo of Chahal and Washington Sundar are now the leading bowlers for RCB and for India as well, so that should hold them in good stead. And something like death bowling has always been their perennial problem. They've got the likes of Navdeep Saini and Mohammad Siraj as well, who have bowled well in patches for them with the new ball and semi-new ball, but have not done the same as far as bowling in depth is concerned. So I think when they're looking at somebody like Kyle Jamieson or Dan Christian, they're looking towards them as more of an all-round package. Dan Christian has had a good BBL even at this ripe age, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and being on the wrong side of 35, but he's still proving to be a valuable member, just like somebody like a Ben Cutting does in the BBL. So uh, you can see where it is coming from. And I think Kyle Kyle Jamison pick also had to do a lot with Mike Hesson. I think being at the helm of affairs for RCB.
Absolutely.
So uh, let's see how it pans out for them. Uh, I did not think that Glenn Maxwell would fetch the amount of money again as he did now, because he seldom provide value for the kind of money that he has gone. But he's had a good season with Australia last year in the T20 format. and we know on his day he can win you matches. So I think um, Kohli might have taken a gamble. I know he has a certain bit of liking towards Glenn Maxwell, but I think this might be his, sort of a final chance before that mega auction comes in. And as I mentioned, all these French players would not get these mega bucks if we go into the mega auction because those will be reserved for uh, other players, who are typically the marquee players. So last season also they said they had a good balance or the best possible balance in the history of their franchise, but they just about sneaked into the playoffs by default. They had a good
Indeed,
start,
that's right.
and they had a good start to the season, but then withered away towards the end. They'll be hoping for more of the same. Uh, if they make the playoffs, I'll be very surprised this year. But let's see how it pans out for them.
Indeed, fair enough. So I think that's pretty much sums up how RCB are looking. Second, I think we'll go to up north, Delhi Capitals. So what I personally thought was they still had an uh, foreign batting option with them, is what I thought. Considering Hetmeyer wasn't necessarily at his best. So Smith at that price, I think it's a steal. I mean, it's a good price. It's a definitely a good price. And then we can also expect him to play the full IPL, mainly considering the World T20 that is in India. I'm actually mentioning that because Michael Clark recently mentioned in one of the podcasts saying maybe uh, Smith may come up with excuses such as probably pulling a hamstring two or on those lines. But I expect each and every foreign player to actually come down to India despite the price or despite this salary that they're being offered to, mainly because of the World T20 next. I mean this late this year as well. Coming to Delhi again, I personally think their strength is the Indian players. Uh, and now, especially with they have a lot of foreign collection in their artillery as well. But their picking of four foreigners would still be tricky because there's some amount of, I'll say, ambiguity in terms of if the South African players would still be available, mainly because of quarantine rules and they joining a bit late. There's some amount of clarity that even Delhi has actually sought from BCCI because Rabada is their spine. Nokia has been amazing for them, so it would be really interesting to see that blend of things. Coming to their Indian strengths, actually, all their players are pretty much firing now. Prithvi Shaw recently got 100. Rishabh Pant is at his one of the best form. Iyer is in all his glory, like always. So nothing much to talk in terms of their Indian strength, but their foreign artillery is also quite good. I'm actually very fascinated because I personally think selection of those four foreigners is very critical for any team to do well. And good artillery. I mean, Vokes may still fly down. Billings, Hetmeyer is still available. Tom Curran is now with Delhi. Let's actually see what's how how Delhi would actually shape up and who their go-to four would be. And I think Smith is certain. There's a heavy influence of Ricky Ponting going for Smith perhaps. But I expected Smith to go at least for maybe 5 to 6 crores for sure. But pretty decent price that they've actually gotten. What's your view on Delhi Capitals and their buys this time around?
Yeah, it was surprising to see Steve Smith just go for 2.2 crores. And the funny bit was when he came up for the auction, RCB started the initial bid at his base price of 2 crores, and then it was Delhi Capitals who raised their bat, and that was it. Uh,
Correct,
you
exactly.
you you would have expected a intense bidding war for a player of Steven Smith's caliber, but that was not to be. And I clearly see Ricky Ponting's hand over there, as he might have wanted an experienced player in the lineup. And moreover, as you mentioned, their core strength and their USP is the Indian strength that they have got in both batting and bowling. When it comes to batting, they've got the likes of Prithvi Shaw, Rishabh Pant, Shreyas Iyer in there. Um, Ajinkya Rahane is also not to be missed out, and so it's going to be interesting to see whom they debut in that top order. Because all these players are top order players, right from Shaw to Pant to Rahane to Smith to Iyer. So how do they manage those batting resources? Is going to be the key. Um and they also have Marcus Stoinis there as the all-round option. I think he's going to be definitely
Indeed,
one of the four overseas players that is going
absolutely.
to play as the first choice. He lends that balance to the side. And then when it comes to their bowling stocks, they are well served in the Indian spin department as well, with Ashwin and Akshar Patel both being there. And then
Mishra as well, yeah.
Amit Mishra as well. And then in fast bowling, they've got somebody like Ishan Sharma, who was injured last season, but I think he will play a major role this year as well. Uh, and of course, they've got their two spirits, Nokia and Rabada, who were so good for them last season and were sort of catalysts for them in the early part of the league stage, with uh, when they almost were guaranteed a place in the playoffs, almost after say 9 or 10 games that they had played, and they had just tapered off at the end of the league stages. And their problem area, I suppose, will be their Indian bowling, the Indian pace bowling. They had tried to play somebody like a Tushar Deshpande, I believe, last season,
That's right.
which did not prove to be too beneficial for them. But they definitely have all the tools. Most of their bases are covered. It's just that how Shreyas Iyer gets his playing 11 right, and those four overseas players as well, depending on their availability. And then I think it's high time that we see a title go to Delhi Capitals. Right from the outset of the IPL, even when they were Delhi Daredevils, they always had the team, but somehow not able to replicate their strength on paper on the field. Maybe this might just be their year. Who knows? But I see overall uh, them to be a very strong uh, and a title contender.
Indeed. One player that I'm particularly excited about is Lukman Meriwala. Happens to be a left arm seamer, plays for Baroda. Also happened to play in TNPL if I'm not wrong. Uh, and Delhi, right, like you absolutely, rightly mentioned. With they did uh, see what can be actually gotten out of someone like a Tushar Deshpande who's been very average. I'm expecting a couple of games that can be played by Lukman Meriwala, and he's been pretty good, and I've watched few of his, uh, you know, uh, uh, Ranji stints and whatnot, but he's been really good, and and he's one player that I'm really excited about. Like there are a couple of players that I'm like, okay, these guys should play and may get some, uh, they can grab eyeballs, and I think Lukman Meriwala is one. Uh, he's almost 30 now, so of course, can he be another T Natarajan, left arm seamer again? So that's another question that can be asked. So we think that's pretty much it on DC. Now let's go to East. Uh, let's discuss KKR. What I personally think, best buy is Shakib definitely. Uh, Shakib is a legend. I admire him, you know, truly, and of course he's an amazing player. He adds the right balance with bat, with the ball. He's a leader himself, and I think that's one probably a facet that KKR is actually looking at, especially considering the way things went. Uh, things probably never went their way last season with the mid-season uh, captaincy switch and whatnot. So Shakib definitely yes. I really like that buy, especially for 3.2 CR, which is I think it's a steal. What I didn't understand was why did they even buy Harbhajan? To be honest, I was genuinely hoping Sunrisers Hyderabad would go for Harbhajan, considering our depleted Indian spinning options and how we as Sunrisers Hyderabad. I mean, of course, I should not be saying we, but as an at least even as a neutral fan, even Sunrisers Hyderabad have clearly struggled with respect to that second spinner last season. So I was expecting Baji to actually come down to Hyderabad, but no. KKR. do have their options in Kuldeep. Uh, they have an amazing spinner in Chakravarti. Uh, Narayan is more than certain. Kuldeep himself doesn't get game to play there, and now they also bought a Budgie, especially when Shakib is also bought, who may give their he may bowl as four overs as well. Uh, Coming to another facet of the very same discussion is who four would KKR would actually go with. Uh, Andy Russell, uh, Shakib definitely, Sunil Narayan, and Pat Cummins is I think the first hit that's on my head. Locky as well would be quite exciting to see. And then I'm not very sure if uh, it's just not clear. I mean, who would be the captain? Of course, if it's Morgan, then he will occupy that very slot. And who three would actually sneak into the team would be a trick question. Considering the spin balance that they have overall, I think Shakib may sit out with Morgan is playing again. So that would be interesting to see. So what's your view on KKR and how did they actually go?
I think it's going to be Ian Morgan who's going to captain them. He has a good amount of experience leading England as well, and they should have appointed him full-time captain right from the outset of the last season. But we
Hmm.
all know that fiasco that happened in the middle of the season between DK and him. So I think he should be leading the side, and I think he will be leading the side in the coming season. So he will definitely be taking up one slot as far as an overseas player is concerned. Um, and both Pat Cummins and Lockie Ferguson were very good for them last season. Lockie Ferguson came into the picture uh, very late in the last season. I think he might be pushing his case and wanting to be in that 11 right from the outset again. And Pat Cummins is a quality bowler across any format, we know. So they might then weigh up their options to see what they can extract out of Sunil Narayan or Andre Russell. Because truth be told, that once Narayan has come back with his remodel action, he has not been even half the bowler that he was, uh,
Hmm.
and he has not been providing the kind of starts that they would have been hoping for at the top of the order with the bat as well. A couple of seasons ago, he was very consistent and just provided them with the impetus at the top of the order, not hitting huge scores, but just hitting those quick 30s and 35s, 40s was getting them started in the power play. But he's been found out by the bowlers,
Hmm.
and they're struggling to get, runs as well as wickets from him. And Andre Russell had a stinker of a season last year in Dubai as well with KKR, and I think they did not utilize him properly. He's somebody who is a floater and should be utilized as per the situation. And most of the times they left him too late. I mean, you can win matches when 12 or 13 runs are required per over, probably, once in a blue moon, or when you're having a fantastic season like he had, 2 or 3 seasons ago. And he won them many matches from those dire situations. But it's not going to happen every now and then. And moreover,
Correct.
his powers have also been on the wane in the last couple of years, be it the various T20 leagues that he has played in, and he has not done much of note. So they might want to see how hot or cold is blowing, and then take chances with them. They got Tom Banton as well in there, who needs to be given much more chances to be consistent as far as getting runs is concerned. And then they have to heavily depend on their Indian talent. Shubman Gill, Nitish Rana at the top of the order. I think they have got to take up more responsibility, especially somebody like Nitin Rana, who has played 3 or 4 seasons of the IPL now. He needs to take up more responsibility and provide them with more runs in there. Dinesh Karthik also has to step up to the plate. Uh, uh, so I think they have to work in unison over there. Shakib will obviously lend that balance to the side, crucial balance. You can expect 4 overs out of him and runs from him consistently. So I think they need to play their cards well in order to progress far in the tournament. And I'm expecting that once somebody like Ian Morgan knows that he's going to be in charge of the team for the full season, he will definitely come up with plans. And he has a very strong bonding with Brendan McCullum. They have been the thickest of friends for a very long time. So I think that chemistry also will come into the play. I'm hoping that you know uh, their performances are going to be good going forward. Uh, but it's been 4 or 5 seasons since they have also made any kind of noise in the IPL.
Well, yes, fair point. Next, I think we should be flying down south. Let's go to Chennai. Uh, Not many buys, I'll say, but uh, did happen to go for Moeen Ali, which happened to be their, I'd say, the best balanced purchase. Dhoni loves spinners, and of course, he'd love to get the best of Moeen. And I, it would be really interesting to see him and Jaddu ball. Uh, Considering he's a foreign spinner, can we say it's curtains for Imran Tahir? Well, I'm not very sure. Uh, Not to say worse, but considering I'll have to say, okay, so, and at buy that wasn't necessarily the best. That had to be Gautam. Uh, I was just wondering if he's still worth that money or no. Because if Moyen is definitely starting, there'll be Jaddu who is a definite player. Do we see only 2 or 3 overs, maybe a over or two from Gautam is one question. He can do the batting as well, but that's uh, you know if he's pretty much focused to be the spinner in the team as well. Of course, they did face some issue with Karan Sharma or Piyush Chawla in the past. So I was just wondering where would he actually fit in the system, and more necessarily so because he'd been bought at that exorbitant price. So he definitely can't go unsold. He's an amazing talent, but at that price, I was still confused. But what I personally felt is CSK went for him because they pretty much had him in their head. They wanted him at any cost, but they thought probably he would go up to maybe 4 or 5 CR. But the number that he has got exorbitant, and I couldn't just believe it. Uh, Having said that, CSK still has amazing wide foreign options again available with them. Would be tricky because I think Fab would certainly play. Of course, there's some amount of, I'd say, ambiguity in terms of how the South African players would be considered and so on and so forth for this. But I think Faf would kind of definitely make the cut. Sam Curran will be interesting. I mean, he's given a lot of love in India, and MS loves him. He's an amazing, all rounder as well. Moin definitely is, and then they have good pace options in Ngidi, and then Hazelwood as well, and then Mitchell Santner, Imran Tahir, of course DJ Bravo as well. So quite wide, and I'm very confused with respect to who the four would be. And the combination is something that actually Balaji and MS I think will be playing a lot with. And we can see a lot of swip swapping in terms of the four foreigners, even more this season, because I think CSK have only bettered themselves, at least in terms of the four foreigners who are going to play. What's your view on CSK, Baya?
Yeah, it was a classical measured auction approach from CSK. I think in this mini auction. And of course, we have heard this thing about them being the dad's army from the last couple of seasons. And last season, obviously, was a shocker for most of the IPL fans and CSK fans as they did not make it to the playoffs for the first time in the tournament's history. So I think they played it pretty smart in the auction by getting the likes of Moeen Ali, um, who was once released by RCB, was going to be that hot property in the IPL, considering his usefulness with both bat and ball. And they got K. Gautam as well, who is a good asset again with both bat and ball. I feel, uh, although he's not what do you call uh, perform to the potential that he is expected to.
Hmm.
for a team
True.
like Rajasthan Royals as well. So, and they would be hoping their bets on the Indian talent, Ruturaj Gaikwad. Well, I can hope that he is given chances at the top of the order right from the outset. And of course, they made that decision of retaining Suresh Raina. So, him being there will add teeth to their top order as well, along with Faf Duplessis. Not too sure how many matches will Dwayne Bravo be playing, considering his fitness. And
Hmm.
then they've got their fast bowling bases also covered with the likes of Shardul and Deepak. Uh, as far
That's
as the
right.
Indian talent is concerned, Sam Curran is again a utility all rounder for them, with Lungi Angiri and Josh Hazelwood wrapping up the frontline overseas fast bowlers as well. It was heartening to see them uh, go for Cheteshwar Pujara. For test cricket fans like us, it was really a nice thing to see a franchise go ahead and pick somebody like Pujara. I can clearly see MS Dhoni's hand in that selection, and who knows, he might be given the chance, and with the kind of all-round game that he has, he might be able to provide that stability to them at the top of the order. And of course, then you've got the likes of Ambati Raidu also in there. Uh, and Robin Uttapa was traded in the transfer window from Rajasthan Royals. So I think they're looking good overall, but just how do these players perform, because it's going to be a mixture of uh, so many years of experience in the likes of Dhoni, Raina, and all these guys, and then the likes of Gaikwad and all these players who are youngsters. So how is that mixture of youth and experience going to catapult them to their earlier glory remains to be seen. Most of these players are also going to be rusty. MS Dhoni only plays IPL, so does Suresh Raina now. How fit is Ravindra Jadeja going to be post his injury? Also going to be very critical. So you can never count them out. You can only ignore them at your own peril. But I see them, doing much better than they did in the 2019 season.
Couple of buys that I'd like to talk specifically with respect to CSK, and this year was one a guy from Kadapa, Andhra Pradesh. His name is Arishankar Reddy, happens to kind of ball right arm medium, plays for Andhra. I've seen a few videos of his. Seems nice, and I think uh, excited to see this as a probably as someone from with Telugu roots. And there's another player called Bhagat Verma, if I'm not wrong, who's bought. He's an Hyderabadi born player, but doesn't necessarily play for Ranjis, and but is actually more of a scouting uh, result, and he's being talked about as well. Uh, CSK has decent scouting in place as well. Uh, a lot of its fraternity also, a lot of it is a lot of its investments are also flowing through the veins of cricketing, I'll say branches within Tamil Nadu. So it would be really, interesting to see because they pretty much have Jagdishan as well this time around, who's a left arm orthodox spinner, pretty much a product of TNPL. Uh, Quite exciting, and I think. I won't say CSK will have a bad IPL like the last time around, but like you rightly pointed out, Rusty definitely is. People have aged; they still have that emotional connect with them, maybe with the franchise, with the players, more specifically with the players because all of them are vintage stars. But having said that, would that be enough for them to actually get over the line? Got to see. But they're playing this time in uh, Indian conditions and especially in Bombay, wherein it does favor some amount of spin. And MS, right? We know him, and he'll probably maybe spin them to glory. Who knows? So that's my take on CSK, and it would be really interesting to see. So I think yes. So we are finished with four teams that we wanted to speak about largely. And then in the next episode of this very IPL auction edition, we'll talk about the next four teams of MI, of Mumbai Indians, Sunrise Hyderabad, Rajasthan, and Punjab Kings. Okay, that will take me some time to correct myself probably. So anyway, thanks everyone for your time today. Any final words and final thoughts of yours, upon Bhaiya?
I think it was a good time spent on the review of these four teams, and as I mentioned, we can review the other four teams and round it off in the next episode.
Certainly, yes. Cheers, everyone. Thank you. See you soon.
Thank you.